Developing Your Deer Dog. Brought to you by Conquest Sense.
Hey guys, Jeremy Moore from Dogbone. This week's Developing Your Deer Dog. We're still on the puppies. This is the second part of a series of 4 that we're going to talk specifically about puppies, foundation work, how we're getting them ready to be deer dogs. And in 1 week's time here, I've got a dog that's a month older. And the reason I've got it, this is Moja. She's a month older than the pup we had on last week. And the reason I use her to want to show this is, boy, what a month can do. Both size-wise and up here mentally. These dogs really accelerate quickly early on. Now Moja's only she's just under 6 months old. And what I've really liked about her is we've done a pretty nice job so far of getting her avoiding some of those bad habits that we talked about last week. Now this week we're going to talk specifically about one and how we form a good habit, and that's one that a lot of people struggle with: recall. Get a dog to come when you call them. You know, they run into, and I see it time and time again with just about every puppy. Moja had it, that pup last week, Elsa, she's going through it actually right now. It's the recall struggle, and I usually see it somewhere between 12 and 14 weeks. Now, it doesn't have to be between 12 and 14 weeks, but I usually see it in that window where all of a sudden these dogs decide, you know what, I'm not going to come when he calls me anymore. And when they're early on, they have the tendency to really want to. They just don't want to be left alone. It's easy for me to get these little puppies to come. It's easy for me to make a little bit of noise. Come on, come on, come on. And all of a sudden, here they come to me. So if I do a good job from, say, 7 weeks to that maybe 12-week period of building it in, we get through the struggles pretty easily. If we don't do a good job when they're younger, if we don't do a good job when they're 7 to 12 weeks old, and we let them kind of wander and we don't get them in the habit of the recall, we're going to run into some major issues. Now, how do we do that early on, and how do we work through those struggles when it does come up? The way I'm going to do it early on is, I'm not a treat trainer by any means, and if you've watched any of our stuff in the past, you'll realize I don't use treats very often. I will use kibble when it comes to recall. When I say kibble, whatever their dog food is, I don't need special treats for this, but I'll use a little handful of dog food, and I'll keep it in my pocket. And when they're little, I'll get down and I'll feel real welcoming to them. Come on, come on, come on, come on. And they come to me, and when they come to me, I go like this, and I give them a little piece of kibble. Now, I'll only have to do that 3, 4, 5 times in a row before they see this, and they go, oh boy, I know what that is, and they come running to me. I'm using that to start forming the habit. Then I'll slowly start to wean back on giving them the kibble and replace it with praise. So early on, I can get dogs to recall very easily and form that habit when they're real little with the use of a little bit of food. Now, when they hit that window where they decide, I'm a little more confident, I'm to the point where I think I'm gonna do my own thing, that's when I eliminate the opportunity for failure. I'll put the dog on a lead, and I'll get through the point where they want to run off, and I'll practice specifically on that little bit of recall in a real controlled environment until we can get through it. It doesn't take long. It's usually a little, I call it kind of the terrible twos area, to get through that. And once you do, you're right back to a solid recall. But be ready for it, because it's likely to happen. And if you do a nice job getting them ready, you can get through it pretty easily like we have here with Moja. So developing your deer dog this week, getting through those hiccups, those little bumps in the road that we call the recall.